This is the second video in my series of how to make reeds for beginners, and this is continuing off of where we left off from the last video. So if you haven't watched that, please go ahead and watch that, because otherwise a lot of this won't make sense to you. We're going to start off from what I call the mummy stage of reeds and form these reeds all the way to blanks, where we're actually going to cut off the tip and get it right to the point where you're going to scrape, and then that's going to be another video, because that's a whole other project in itself, is learning how to scrape and finish reeds. I know many of you have reached out to me since I made the first part in this series and have said, when are you going to make the second part? And I apologize that it's taken me so long to do that. And I will try not to take so much time to get the third part of the series out, but I will say that if you are chomping at the bit to make your own reeds, sign up for some private lessons with me, and I will finish out the process with you, and we can talk about your reeds and your specific issues and things that you're dealing with. If this is the first time that we're meeting, my name is Dr. Natalie Law. I'm a professional bassoonist and teacher, and I'd love to help people learn how to play bassoon and improve their skills so that you feel confident on this instrument. So if that's a topic of interest to you, please make sure that you're subscribed down to the channel. Make sure that you give me a thumbs up if you find the video helpful. And I'd love to know any questions or thoughts that you have down in the comment section below. So let's get started. All right, so after the last video, we ended up with basically this, what I call mummies, where we wrapped it and then we let it set at least overnight. Now you may notice that the thread I'm using this time is a little bit different. This is, I think I mentioned before that I use basically whatever I have on hand. So this is just basic cotton thread. It's not a huge deal what you use to wrap the mummy. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the mummy from the mandrel that it was sitting on, and we're going to put it onto a regular mandrel with a handle so we can work with it. And at this point, before I take the thread wrapping off, I take and tighten the wire, because after the cane has dried, it has shrunk a little bit, and so more than likely this wire is a little bit loose, and you can definitely tell. So I'm going to tighten it just like I do normal wires, and it's a little bit long, so I'm going to clip off just the end of that tip there. Okay, and so now that I've tightened that and secured it, I'm going to start taking off the wrapping from the mummy. And I like to take the thread down to the collar, and I like to check to see, are there any cracks in the blade of the cane? And sometimes there are, and sometimes you really can't help it. Like maybe there's just a weak spot in the cane, or, you know, maybe you didn't quite wrap this tight enough, or, you know, accidentally squeezed it too tight with your pliers when you were crimping it down before. There could be a number of reasons, and it's not too uncommon to have a crack. So if there is a crack in the cane, like one, say you have a crack going this way, if it's like looks like a huge crack, like it's going all the way down the blade, it's more than likely your reed here is toast. You can definitely still finish it to, you know, to go through the process and to practice, but it's likely not going to be playable. Now, sometimes there's just a small crack that, I don't know, is maybe half an inch or something like that. Sometimes those cracks are just surface cracks. They're on the very surface of the cane. They don't go all the way through, and they're not life-threatening per se to the reed. So what you can do at that moment, you can take some of your 220 grit sandpaper and sort of go back and forth across the crack at this point. And what that does is it kind of sands out the crack and kind of helps prevent it from becoming an even bigger problem. So that's what you would do at this point if you had like a little crack right here. So we're going to keep on removing the thread here and put that aside. And the next thing we need to do is start putting on the rest of the wires. Now I use 4 wires on my reeds. It's pretty common to actually use 3. There's even some types of reed making that just use 2 wires. So the number of wires will vary depending on the reed style, but I happen to use 4. That's the way that I was taught, and I've just sort of stuck with that, and it's worked for me, so I've kept up with it. So my first wire is at 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the reed to the middle of the wire, and the next one up will be 3/8 of an inch up from the bottom. And you might notice if your reed has like one part of the butt that's a little bit longer than the other. At the end, we will cut this off a little bit so they're even. So measure from the shorter side. That's the ideal way to do it. So we're going to cut some wire here and put that wire on. And this very much the same way that you put the first wire on. And it's probably going to take you some time to get as quick at putting wires on as me, you know, just because it's kind of a muscle memory thing. But we'll keep working through here. So the next wire needs to be 3/8 up from the bottom. This one's a little low, so I'm gonna, before I totally tightened it down, I left it loose enough so that I could move it, because usually you have to adjust it a little bit. Let's check here. It's still just a hair low, so I'm just gonna move it a little bit. And, oh, I put it a little too high that time. Oops. Sometimes it takes some wiggling around to find the exact spot. There we go. I noticed that my first wire might have moved from where I originally put it. It's a little bit lower than 1/8 of an inch, but the problem is you can't really adjust it easily after it's dried, because it's really kind of settled into the spot that it's going to be in. It's really hard to adjust it because it'll want to just slip back into where it's dried to. So if it's not quite in the right place, if it's not quite 1/8 of an inch, that bottom wire, don't stress about it. It's not the end of the world. But we're going to keep on going. We'll put our third wire on. So again, how I like to put on wires is I start in the middle here, put it kind of halfway over, and I start on the opposite. Like if I want the little point of the wire to point in the opposite direction of the one below it, which is typically what you want. You want a point going out here, a point going out here, point here, point here. It's just easier to work with the wires that way when the points are going in different directions. So I start on the opposite side of the lower point, and then I come around here. And always remember with your wires that, you know, once you have established which wire is going to be above and which one's going to be below, like at this point, you don't want to cross the wires. Like you don't want this top wire to suddenly go under and be the bottom wire, because what'll happen is when you go to tighten it, it'll bind up and it'll break. It really weakens the wire. So always keep the top part of the wire on the top and the bottom part of the wire on the bottom as you go around. So it should end up looking, I mean, this is before I'm tightening it, but you can see that I've kept the top wire is on top, the bottom wire is on bottom. They don't crisscross. And then I take this top wire and I'm going to loop it underneath the bottom one. So I'm going to start that loop with my fingers here just to get it started. And then I'm going to take the pliers and I'm going to pull and then twist. And that's really important that you always pull first and then twist, because you want to be creating space in the wire and then twisting. If you just twist without actually pulling, you risk binding the wire up and breaking it. So you'll probably learn that by experience if you haven't already. So I'm just gonna get this a little closer. Now that the two wires are kind of settled together, I'm gonna check my measurement. So this measurement, and remember I'm gonna be measuring from the shorter or the higher up butt end of the reed. This one is from the bottom of the reed to the top of that wire is 3/4 of an inch. So right now I'm a little bit high. I'm gonna push it down a bit. Bottom to 3/4 of an inch. Yeah. So all the other wires on the reed out of these 4 are measured to the center of the 2 wires. This particular one is a little bit lower. You measure to the top of the top wire of this third wire here. So that's a slightly different way to measure it. So 3/4 of an inch to that. And then I'm gonna pull and twist until I have it pretty snug. Pull, twist. And then I'm gonna cut off that wire. Okay, so that one's in place. So let's put our final wire on. This is known as the first wire or the top wire. All right, and so the point of the third wire is going this way. So I want to start my last wire going this way. So I'm gonna again start it in the middle here. I'm gonna wrap it around and keep the top part of the wire on top. I'm not gonna crisscross the wires. I'm gonna just twist them around here just once, and then I'm gonna start the actual twist, and I'll get it so we can measure it. Can't really measure the wires until you have them kind of snug enough that they sit close together. Otherwise your measurement's gonna be off. So right now the wires are kind of far apart, so you can't really measure that accurately. So you need to tighten it at least tight enough to get there. Now this top wire, you wanna be careful. You do not wanna use your full strength to tighten this top wire. You ideally, the top wire should have some play in it. It should be pretty easy to move it, because if it's cinched too tight, it'll close off the vibrations of the reed and make it very difficult to play. Before we finalize that, I'm going to check the measurement. This one is 1 inch up from the bottom to the middle of that top wire. So move this up just a hair. Okay. Yeah, and I just kind of double check the other wires. Looking pretty good. I'm just gonna tighten it a little bit more. You don't want it so loose that it's just gonna fall up and down, but definitely don't use all of your strength to tighten that wire. The other wire should be pretty snug. And then I'm just gonna do one last tug on the bottom 3 to make sure that they are good to go. All right, so we've got the 4 wires on the reed, and now it's time to put some thread on. And you can see I'm almost out of thread here, but this is just cotton thread. Some people use nylon thread. I'm not sure exactly what weight of thread this is, but I will try to link something similar to what I use in the comments. So if you want to get the same thing, you can. So I am going to start this. Okay, so this is something that takes a while to figure out. If you've never wrapped a reed before, your first reed will be very ugly. If it isn't already, it's gonna be very ugly, and it's gonna be hard to get this. So just watch what I'm doing and do your best to emulate it, knowing that it may not happen immediately for you. So I take the end of this thread and I put it at the bottom, like on the top of the bottom wire, and I kind of get it so there's not a whole lot of end of that thread. And then what I'm doing is just wrapping it around normal, like just straight up right around normal between these bottom 2 wires. There's no weaving or special knots or anything. Like, this is just straight up wrapping it around. And once I've got that space in between the bottom and the second to bottom wire filled in, I'll hold that with my thumb, and I'll take my pliers and I will turn up each of these wires. Those will end up being hidden beneath the thread. So now comes the weaving part, the part that you would recognize on your reed. This is hard to figure out the first time, but I'm going to show you how I hold the thread. And then you don't have to hold the thread the same way. You can figure out a different way to do it, or you could just hold the thread just, like this. But the way that I do it, it kind of avoids your hand cramping up because you have to hold the thread for a while. I put it between my pointer and middle finger, and then I kind of turn this around so you can see how I've got it here. And then that way I can, when I pull here, it kind of moves the thread through. So I'll do that one more time. Put it between my pointer and middle finger, wrap it around here. I have kind of an easy way to control the thread. I go like this, and then when I weave it around, then I can just pull to move more thread through. Like my pointer finger acts kind of like a spool of thread, and that just makes it comfortable to move the thread around on the reed, and it keeps your hand from cramping. So again, you don't have to do it this way, but it's just the way that I do it. We're going to start the weaving, the part that you would actually recognize on a finished reed. So we're going to go down, and then we're going to wrap under the bottom wire, and then we're going to go up, and then we just wrapped over that one that we just made, and then we're going to come down again. Now, this is where some people might differ a little bit. You could create a lot of space, You could put your wrappings right next to each other. I mean, some people kind of do their own thing. I don't know. I do maybe 1 millimeter or something, I don't know, in between each thread. And the idea is that you want these 2 wires fully covered. So then come back under, go back up, go back over, under. And you might notice I'm using my left hand to rotate the reed so that I don't have to be doing weird things with the thread. I can just rotate this. That's a pro tip. Took me a while to figure that one out. All right, keep going. So this process you just repeat over and over and over again. Over, under, until you have the whole thing covered. And again, your reed is not going to look pretty. If this is your first time doing this, it's going to look pretty ugly and it's going to be lopsided. And yeah, my first reed was horribly ugly. And it's just something that you pick up over time and you figure out how you want it to look exactly, and you figure out how to hold the thread, and it's kind of a muscle memory type thing that you eventually develop. So it's not, don't worry if your thread weaving skills are not quite up to par yet. Honestly, the whole point of this thread wrapping, it's just to help seal the reed. So as long as it's doing that basic job, it doesn't matter how pretty or ugly the thread wrapping is. It just needs to seal off the reed. So I'm going to keep going here. Kind of running out of room on the bottom here. But I basically have my wires covered. You can still see them a little bit, but it's not a huge deal. All right, and this is where I start wrapping just above it. I just immediately went from like on my upward weave. Now I'm just going to do that regular wrapping around. Nothing special. And this fills in the rest of that way up to the second wire. I've got a little bit of space left before I hit that second wire, because now I want to tie off the reed so that the thread stays in place. So I'm going to hold this with my left finger, and the way that I learned to remember how to tie this off is to scrape the brownie batter off the bowl, and then you end up with this loop that you drop over, and then you pull that loop tight, and you can see it stays in place. I usually do this 2 or 3 times so that it's really secure. So again, I'm going to show you. This takes a minute to figure out. You're going to, the thread is on your left, your hand is on your right. You're going to scrape the brownie batter bowl around it, and then you end up with this loop, right, that you just created, and then you're going to drop that loop right over the reed, and then you're going to pull it tight. And I'm going to do one more time in action. Thread is on the left, hand is on the right. You're going to scrape the brownie batter bowl till you end up with this loop that you're going to drop over the reed, and then you're going to pull it tight. There we go. And it's pretty well filled in. There's no giant gaps to undo. So I'm going to go ahead and take a razor blade here, and I'm just going to cut off the very end there so that I have a nicely looking reed right here. So we're getting pretty close. It's starting to look like a real reed. Now, the next part is we've put the thread on, but it's really easy for this thread to unravel. I mean, it wouldn't take much, especially after you soak and dry the reed, for the thread to become loose and unravel. And you might have even experienced this before on a reed. So I'm gonna put away my thread because I'm done with that for now. And this is where I use beeswax, ugly looking chunk of beeswax. This is just I don't even know, 1 pound. It was at one time a 1 pound block of beeswax, and I'm using it for reeds. So I basically I put little pieces of this beeswax on the reed, and I heat it up over a flame. And there's a number of ways to do this. And again, this is not the only way to seal a reed. Some people use Duco cement. Some people use nail polish. Some people don't use thread at all, and they use shrink wrap tubing that you heat up. You just put it on here and then you heat it up. There's so many ways to do this, and there's no right or wrong way. This is the way that I learned, and I happen to really actually like it. Out of all the options for sealing the reed, I have had the least amount of trouble with thread coming undone with beeswax, because I think what happens is it penetrates a little bit deeper into the little hollows between the thread, and it kind of holds it in place. Whereas most other things that you use, like whether it be Duco cement, nail polish, whatever, it just creates sort of a casing around the thread. And so if that casing gets broken, or the cane shrinks a lot on the inside, it can still come undone. But the beeswax sort of, once it gets in there, it's deep enough that it's going to hold it in place, and it's going to expand a little bit too. So I have found that to be the most effective. So you need a source of heat, And if you're like me, you use what you have around the house. If you want to be more fancy, I suppose you could use an alcohol lamp like they use for science experiments or whatever. You just need an open flame. I just use a candle because that's what I have on hand. It works perfectly fine. It would be really hard to hold it above like an open flame like this. You really need an ongoing flame. All right, I'm just gonna light this candle here. And if you are going to use a candle like this, make sure that it has an open mouth. A lot of candles have like a closed mouth at the top. This one's pretty open, so you can get the reed in there pretty easily. And this one, I have 3 wicks, but I only do 1 because I don't want to be burning my hand as I'm going. So whatever method you use of putting beeswax on, just be safe with an open flame. It's so easy for things to catch fire, including the reed itself. So just be very careful. So once I have my flame going, I'm gonna take the reed off the mandrel here, and I'm gonna get a little chunk of beeswax. And it's always kind of an art figuring out how much beeswax you need. So you can kind of see about how much I took. If you can get kind of like a thin chunk of beeswax, it works better that way. It's helpful to use like an old razor blade for that. And so what I do is I wrap it around here, just, so it's gonna stay on. So I've got kind of like a decent wrapping around the reed. I might have to put some more on, but then I hold the reed up to the flame. I don't know how well this is gonna show up on camera, to be honest with you, but the wax is melting from the heat onto the thread. And it's really easy to burn the thread too if you get too close to the flame. So just, again, please be careful, really pay attention to what you're doing. And if this way scares you, if using the open flame scares you, use one of the other methods of sealing the reed. Use the nail polish, the Duco cement. Maybe don't even use thread, get some shrink wrap tubing for reed making. There's lots of options to seal the reed. This is just one of them. Okay, so my wax is pretty much melted, and I don't know how well this is gonna show up on camera, but there's definitely spots on here that are a little bit lighter where the wax hasn't quite soaked in because it wasn't quite enough, so I'm gonna do a little bit more. So this is where I'm getting ready to clip the tip, and so I'm gonna put it in some water so that I can avoid any cracking when I go to clip the tip. And this is also where if the ends of my reed aren't quite lined up like we noticed, this is where I'm going to fix it. So I'm going to fix it with a razor blade, sharp white razor blade, and then I'll probably clean it up with some sandpaper. So I just let it soak a little bit, just, avoid cracking a little bit, and that just kind of holds it in place a little bit better. The side that's a little bit higher, I'm going to take my razor blade and kind of shave off that side a little bit. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, just in the ballpark. And to clean it up, I'll just take some sandpaper and run it back and forth until it's kind of cleaned up. But yeah, okay, so it's looking better. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, getting them somewhat even is helpful. And this is where I use a little machine lovingly called a guillotine because we're cutting off the head of the reed. But I believe, it's just a tip cutter. I'll link down to where you can get one of these in the comments or in the description. There's different brands and there's different price points. I have the Solutions brand and I've had it for a number of years. As you can see, it's pretty beat up. I need to give it a good cleaning. It's worked perfectly fine for me. So take my reed out of the water here. And before I actually go to clip the tip, I'm gonna check the wires that I can see. So I'm gonna put this back on the mandrel, and actually I'm gonna go ahead and tighten. I know that second wire in particular here, I think with the heat from the flame, it kind of expands a little bit and so it loosens up. So I'm gonna tighten it and then put it down and then clean that up. I'm gonna put my first wire down. So you need to use your first wire as a reference point for how long the tip is. So it's critically important that the first wire is in the right place. So this is where I double check that it's 1 inch from the bottom to the middle of those 2 wires, and it is. So now I know that my first wire's in the first right place, so I can put this on the guillotine, and I cut to 28 millimeters. So the top of this first wire reed is going to hit you probably can't see this very well on camera, but there's millimeter marks, and I push it up to the 28 millimeter mark. And I can't get there right away, so I have to actually do a couple cuts before I get there. So I get it up to the 27 millimeter, or 28 millimeter, I should say, and line it up just so it's right in the center. And then I use the guillotine, and there we go. I have a clipped tip. Looks pretty good. I want to let this dry because it's easier to scrape dry. Now, these things can be a little bit expensive to get, so you can definitely clip the tip other ways as well. You can use a razor blade on a little chopping block. You can use a pair of clipper pliers. There's multiple options. You just have to be careful. It's harder to get it exact, and you have to just mark out where you're going to cut. But now we're basically ready to scrape, and that's going to be in a part 3 video. That takes you all the way through to the blink process. We're getting ready to finish it with a knife so that it's playable. Again, that's going to be in the next video, and I will try to get that out as soon as I possibly can. But in the meantime, if you need help, please sign up for a lesson with me, and I will show you the entire process. Most likely it will take several lessons to really get through what we need to get through, several hour-long lessons. Reed making is not something that you learn overnight, so just be prepared for that. And I'd love to help you out in an individualized session and kind of talk you through, especially any questions that you might have. If this video was helpful for you, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and let me know any questions or comments down in the comments section. And I will see you guys next time.